with mathematically modeling things, which has led us to have a deeper understanding ourselves of what makes Fractally so special. The single biggest thing that I identified this week, and partially I have to give James Smart some credit because him and I bounce ideas back and forth on a regular basis. But it's the idea that ranking, ordinal ranking, is actually fundamental to economics. That there's no scale of value out there. And that as individuals, we prefer A over B, because that's the level at which choices are made. So if you look at Austrian school economics, there's a whole bunch of economic theory about ordinal ranking and what it implies about the type of math that you can perform on ordinal ranking of values. This is something I've known for a while. I just connected the dots that that's sort of what we're doing in these meetings. We're coming up to an agreed order. And the analogy of us as scientific instruments, which is making measurements week after week, is not quite it's not quite as easy as saying that there's some kind of error bar around our value judgments. In particular, value is multidimensional, and the output of any given week is based on consensus. So it's a consensus of a group. So the instrument itself is not the individual, but the group is collectively making a measurement, and the individuals are bargaining with each other in making that assessment. So you can't say that there is, I guess there's I don't think that the ranking has a transitive property, that if A is greater than B and B is greater than C, that A is automatically greater than C. I think you have to look at every pair individually, because value is multidimensional, and different combinations of values might be on different scales. So A might be greater than B on one scale, and B might be greater than C on a different scale. So A and C might be reversed because the scales that they're on, you might value differently, which would cause things. So when you factor in that the economic calculus of ranking cannot be compared, you realize every single grouping, you got a different set of values that are being negotiated based both on the individuals in the group and on the contributions. And so you might be ranking things based on slightly different value scales. And therefore, comparing measurements of one person in 1 week versus the same person in a different week with a different group, there's not too much, or let's just say it's really, really hard to isolate whether or not it's a problem with their ranking or the system, or if it's just an artifact of the fact that, well, you have different people in the group which changed the scales, and you still got an accurate ranking in that sense of things. So what does that mean? Well, if you take a group of 100 people, there's millions of potential groupings of 6. And if you go to 1,000 people, it goes up to billions of groups of 6 that are potential. Each group has a different potential ranking. It's not because ranks can't be, not necessarily transitive. Maybe within a particular property of value, it could be transitive, but not across all value scales is it transitive. So what we're doing is we're doing a statistical sampling of the group, right? Of the billions of combinations of 6 people, we're doing a random sample, and that random sample is being used to estimate the expected value of someone's rank. The expected value being a statistical term, which, given all the possible outputs and the probability of each of them, adding them all together, and that gives you the expected value. It doesn't mean that any other value is wrong. It just means that statistically on average is what you would expect. So now that we have agreed to switch to compensating or distributing respect based upon the average of your level or your ranking, we're basically doing it according to the expected value, which is what we would mathematically predict you would receive in a random grouping. And then we're integrating that over time to derive effectively the value scale of the community as a whole. And that value scale is just the integration of all of our collective value scales as they are negotiated with our peers, right? And so when you're randomly grouped in a group, you're negotiating your value scales and coming to an agreement. This is what we're doing, and then we're integrating that all over time. So I think the other major insight, or I guess restatement of stuff that's sort of been said in the past, but even though values are rank order or ordinal, if you took all the things you value in your life and you sorted them from least to greatest, and you attempted to put a monetary value on it, I think what you'd find is that on one end of the scale, things are priceless. And on the other end of the scale, things are next to worthless. But in any sense, it's a Pareto distribution. You have a couple of things that are priceless, and then highly valued things, and then it just keeps going down. So, family members are more valuable than your silverware, but there's very little difference between a spoon and a fork. So from a ranking perspective, that informs us that it's easier to identify or distinguish that family members are more valuable than silverware, because there's a greater perceptual difference, even though there's not a numerical unit of value that we can actually assign something like family. There is just this distinction that we can all recognize that this is clearly more valuable to us. And so it's easier to identify the top half of any group than the bottom half of any group. And that's why we struggle sometimes fighting over the lower levels. And we don't really struggle so much in saying, well, who are the top three and who are the bottom three? That's usually an easier distinction. And we struggle a lot, 4 versus 5, 5 versus 4, but it's, and I think it has to do with that. So I think that gives credence if you view an individual as having a Pareto distribution on their rank ordering. Our community is doing the same thing. We're imposing a Pareto distribution on the rank ordering consensus of the group. And I think in that way, we are mimicking nature. Now, is it the exact distribution? Should it be a different exponential constant than phi? I don't know. I think there's a range that could work, and we'll get varying results. All of that said, I'll be working on a blog post in the coming week to consider how team compensation could be changed in light of the changes to individual compensation. Right now, teams are compensated by matching the individuals. I'm contemplating some variation of taking the average of the team members level and making that the team level, and then having the teams receive funds according to their average level on the same scale. So teams would just kind of be like a parallel Fibonacci curve in terms of their compensation, instead of just matching of the individuals. There's some interesting properties I think that fall out of it, but I want to explore it more in writing so that I don't get things crossed. but those are some of the things going forward. The other thing going on this week is we had a good meeting with attorneys over the next generation of the Fractal Contributors Agreement, which and I have some new insights on the tax nature of tokens and opinions and things like that. So I'll have more information on that in the coming weeks. And the team is pushing really, really hard to get an open source beta of our software released by the end of summer. So we've made internal commitments along that schedule. Obviously, these are projections, and development time. You can hit one nasty bug and it can delay your week. So I can't commit to any particular thing because it's not done yet. But if everything goes according to plan, there will be an open source version of our blockchain, and we'll have a demo app that we can actually use in our consensus meetings by the end of the summer. So that's my update. Any questions?
If you do have a question or a comment, just feel free to raise your hand. Cruz.
Yes, hello. It's great to see everyone. And my question is then regarding the new resource billing system. It's a great art. Yeah, it's great to have the insight from you regarding what's going to happen. And to me, it was the biggest question about the new blockchain, because it was the biggest problem to me as a developer to manage all the resources and stuff. And as I understand it right now, we're moving towards a commission-based system. So if we used to say we have no commission on transactions, we just have a deposit on it. But now we're saying we do have a commission, but it's paid from a separate account, which is a prepaid account, which means that your main deposit does not get subtracted. So you still have the same amount of money on your main account, but you're paying from a separate one. Is that the vision you have? Okay,
yes.
Good.
Yeah. So there's two things that are different. One is the prepaid account, which distinguishes it from Ethereum's model, where every single transaction has a small fee on it. And that prepaid account allows us to make accounting easier. If you're trying to audit your balance, if you have all these little micro payments for fees, that could be a problem. Also, fees will probably be fractions of a cent. And you want to add those up in a higher resolution account rather than causing the currency itself to have 10 digits of precision in order to account for fees. And then your account balance is always this wonky thing. So it really helps with the accounting, and it basically works like a toll tag where they bill you monthly or they bill you every time you get down a certain part, and it tops up. The other thing that's different is unlike EOS, where you buy or lease CPU, RAM, and net, and the user has to manage those ratios, when you do your transaction, it will buy just the resources you need for that transaction just in time from the markets. And no one else can interact with the markets, which means there's no speculation pushing prices up of storage. It means that we can, from a user's perspective, they got one number. What is the balance on my prepaid account and how close am I to empty? And they just use it like they would use electricity on their house, right? Your power companies adjust rates throughout the day based on peak demand and so forth. You trust the meter to meter it properly, and then they bill you. And no one goes back and is double checking the power company's math. Likewise, people just use the blockchain knowing that these things will be ticked off. And contracts can still subsidize users' actions and just for their part of the transaction. So we'll be able to, you might have a prepaid amount, but depending on the apps you're using, it might not actually be drained because the app might be paying for it. So those are some of the things. We've got other things in the mix, but I wanted to lay out the philosophical differences and the challenges that faced on EOS, and that we were facing. Because if you push the complexity of managing resources up to the app level, most apps can't do it. Don't have the time or developer resources, and it makes every app slightly different, which reduces user experience. All told, I think it reduces total overhead on the network as well, because on Ethereum, on EOS, you have to do all these other transactions in order to get the resources, and then you still have to bill it. Here, it's just you top up your resource account, and then you just bill it as it's going. And so there's less total overhead involved. So I think we should have a better user experience with less squatting, and that's what I'm going for.
Great, thank you. So you're saying that RAM is going to be purchased on the go, right? So you don't have to Okay, great.
No prepaying a RAM. It means the end users are paying for the RAM rather than the contracts. Or if a contract wants to pay for RAM, they have to subsidize the transaction just as it's occurring, rather than the contract buying the RAM, or you having to try to figure out, is this RAM stored in the user's memory or the contract's memory? And if it's stored in the user's memory, how does the user get it back? And all those other problems and plus the speculation that goes into allowing people to buy RAM, hold it, and not use it. So this should keep costs as low as possible, but not too low. That's the other thing. Unlike EOS, where when the demand was low, the price was basically zero, we got spam. We will have a floor on price, which will set a minimum standard for the economic value of a transaction, which will prevent the network from growing huge just because we're underpricing it because there's no demand. Just because there's no demand does not mean it's free and you can do things. We're going to have a minimum standard.
And how much do you think, how much do you estimate a transaction would cost? Like what would be the minimum?
It really depends on the transaction. I think on the order of 1 cent per transaction is sort of probably a reasonable floor. We can debate it, but if it's not worth a penny, penny for your thought might be a good analogy here. Transactions the thought. If you want to share it, there's a cost to the entire group every time someone publishes a transaction.
Great, thank you. And the transaction payment, the cost, where will it go when it's
burned?
Burned. Great. So it's going to be deflationary mechanism.
Oh, the currency supply is inflationary 5% per year, but if you burn more than 5% of the supply, I suppose it could go deflationary.
Great. Thank you so much.
Yep.
All right. Any other questions or comments? Current topic is the better blockchain resource billing system, but there's many other things that have been posted if you guys want to discuss or ask any questions. Hello, Brindle Swan. You can unmute yourself, sir.
Hi. Dan might remember me from the early BitShares mumbles. Anyway, an idea I've had for a long time is rather than tweaking the variables as you go along, and some people getting upset, tweaking them again later, I would recommend having teams pursue slightly different blockchains with slightly different variables from the start to test scientific method, and perhaps add competition and prizes for the team that gets it right according to some predefined metrics. So anyway, that's all I wanted to say.
Well, I appreciate that thought, and I look at it this way: the entire cryptocurrency space is your competition of different parameters. You have a bunch of different ESIO blockchains out that all fork from the same code base, all tweaked parameters and tried something different. There's a certain minimal cost per experiment and in time, energy, and people. And sometimes we have to tolerate slightly less than perfect parameters just because there's not enough people and manpower to test all of them effectively. And as we've seen, it's really, really hard to test them theoretically because they involve human choice and human action, which is the challenge with modeling this, as Matt and our team has been discovering.
I'm just thinking that perhaps the hype and incentives built into having a competition, crypto Olympics kind of thing, would bring in more money and more people right from the start. But I understand your point as well.
But one of the things that Fractally is doing is we're going to create many fractals. Each fractal can tweak some of the parameters within their own fractal, independent of the chain itself. So you could almost see that the entire experiment of the Fractally chain of DAOs is each DAO has an opportunity and can operate as small as 20 people to experiment with different parameters and see how they work out. My conclusion is that there is no one right parameter and that people kind of adapt around whatever parameters you choose. So I think there's a range of things that will work. And then it's just about the relative degree of working that is available. But this is on BitShares, I had one fee model, Steam another, EOS another, and this is round 4. But each time, I thought I was getting better. I learned a couple things from the EOS model.
Thank you.
Thanks. I appreciate your feedback and welcome to the group.
All right, we're getting close to the top of the hour here. Any more questions and comments? We'll be going in our breakout rooms in about 20 minutes. If you happen to be new, just let me know in the chat and we can make sure you're squared away. Main thing you need today, if you are new, is your Hive user account. And we can chat privately here in Zoom. Just let me know.
Yeah, we've been using Hive a lot. I noticed that there's a BitShares fractal and an EOS fractal, or even on EOS fractal. It would be interesting to see if there was a Hive fractal and we could integrate that community. I think the way we grow is by reaching out to all these other communities and being helpful, being friendly and helpful, helping them with their governance, helping them with doing public goods for their chains, creating fractals, and helping organize them and expose them to fractal governance. And as we do that, we create a welcoming environment to as many people as possible, rather than an environment of we're doing it right and everyone else is wrong. We could offer to help, offer to organize people. So if you have a shared interest between Fractally and any of these other chains, we can do that. But since we're posting everything on Hive and we have been for the past 3 months and everyone here has a Hive account, it just seems weird to me that we don't have a Hive team that is working to bring that community aligned with what we're doing.
Yeah, it's a really, really good point. So there's a challenge for anyone there. If you want to rope in some of the very active contributors in the Hive community, get a team going here and begin to get beginnings of a fractal going for the Hive community.
Or even just a reach out, right? You don't necessarily have to start a whole new fractal for them, but just a plan to reach out to the Hive community and engage them and welcome them to our fractal. And as that grows, more and more people will come to appreciate what we have to offer. And I think there's a lot of value that people are getting out of this process, meeting people, talking every week. And I think this is building a very strong community that respects the people behind it, instead of treating people as anonymous, avatars. All right. We've updated the spreadsheet to utilize the new model. It's not going to go into effect this week. It's going to, I guess, Josh, when's are you going to be ready to adopt the two
The
rounds?
plan is next Saturday.
Right.
We were trying to have it ready for this Saturday, but it just didn't quite work out. So I think from the beginning, we've been kind of mentioning that it would be, I believe it's the August 6th.
Yeah.
So next Saturday, we're going to begin moving to 2 rounds and basically implementing all the changes from the addendum. And so we've been working behind the scenes to figure all of that out. And some of the members of the Genesis Fractal have contributed a lot of value and feedback to that as well. So thank you guys for helping as much as you can. And I think that's going to be pretty exciting. It's basically a new era. We're upgrading the vehicle, so to speak. I'm excited about it.
Yeah.
Also, if there's any questions or comments on that, the addendum, which did pass last week, if anyone's just kind of tuning in and they don't know what's happened in the last week or two, there was a proposed addendum to the white paper, and the first proposed addendum to it, and it involved changing our process here based on all of the learnings recently, and that people had time to give feedback on it. We did the proposal passed, and now we're beginning the process of getting ready to implement it. And so those changes that we're talking about are getting implemented next Saturday. And I'll grab the link and post that here in the chat for anyone who hasn't seen it yet.
Yeah, I just want to thank the community for the flexibility in trying out these ideas even before blockchain, because it's definitely a lot easier to update an Excel spreadsheet and some equations than to write a whole new smart contract. And to test this out on Zoom rather than have to write all the software before we learn these lessons. It's definitely allowing us to evolve much faster. And the result of that is that's a result of your patience in allowing us to do these tests before we get to a full-fledged blockchain and token that then really starts to make changes much harder to unravel. I think it's going to position the entire community for much better success in the medium to long term. And that's a result of your commitment and belief in the long-term value of what we're doing here. So thank you so much for participating in this process. I also like that we're demonstrating that this process does not necessarily depend upon having a complex technological foundation. I think that technology will lubricate things and accelerate things and allow third parties to value what we're doing more easily. But nevertheless, we've demonstrated a means of reaching consensus and building a community. If you think about what happened last week, the motion passed with almost unanimous support, and we all have a high degree of confidence that there was actually unanimous support instead of just a poll or no discussion. Everyone had a chance to speak to their team and to have their team representatives represent that to the entire group. So everyone had a voice, and we got a sense that, well, there was a little bit of hesitancy, a little bit of things like that, but broad support for the change. That type of consensus building is, I think, unique to this process and more inclusive than anything I've seen out there. So I would be curious how you guys have experienced that. Cruz.
Yes, my question is regarding the block producers. So a while ago, you announced that you're inviting block producers, the future block producers, and I was wondering if you have any updates on that, and if the test net that is coming will involve block producers, or is going to be just internal, your own servers. And probably the most important question is: have you thought about lowering the requirements for the servers, for the RAM, for the new blockchain?
Sure. So in the name of going quickly and getting this technology out there, we will have a chain that we're running so that people can view it, but it will be read only from the rest of the world's perspective. But for developers, they can run their own local chain where they can experience it and build and have all the experiments there, because I think 99% of the value is actually derived from being able to run your own private local chain to test on. The reason for that is the resource model is still in its infancy. We don't want to have to deal with spam and all those other things right now. So it will be public so people can see it and experience that aspect of it. But it's primarily going to be a release for a bunch of private tests for people to do. I don't think we need integration tests between all the different developers in the community right now, so much as, hey, this is the API, these are the docs on how you build apps, this is the structure, and all those other things. Because we're more like releasing that. I would put this out there as somewhere between like a EOS DOM 1.0 and EOS DOM 2.0. If you're from the EOS community, those were the beta releases before we got to the official 1.0 release. So what that means is that the technology stack is about 50% through its development cycle. I think to the time frame from this release that we're having for end of summer and a final blockchain that is run by block producers elected by the council or appointed by the council and all that other stuff, it's probably a 6-month gap between there. So obviously this is going to go as the technology and the development takes and as we learn things, but I would hope that from one year from the start of these meetings, we will have that final chain live, managed by block producers and launched. So that will follow basically a 1-year development cycle for what's effectively a new blockchain from scratch with new governance model from scratch with all the infrastructure. That's a very aggressive timeline. I know it seems like an eternity for all of us who want this yesterday and can't wait to have it. But from the grand scheme of things, this is a monumental undertaking.
And the resources, the RAM and all that, have you thought about?
The total, yeah. So we got the new database that I previewed the benchmarks for a month or so ago. That was integrated in this week, and that database should allow us to operate on less RAM but have more storage.
Okay.
So we'll have a little bit more flexibility on how you configure your nodes for that. Obviously, the total throughput and performance of the system will depend upon the ratio of data that basically fits in the cache, your RAM being the cache, versus the long tail of data that's infrequently accessed. And so the amount of RAM required for the network to operate efficiently will be defined by the size of that working set. If you start accessing data that is old and not in cache, your CPU costs are going to be much higher for that transaction, because a cache miss is like 100 times more delay than a cache hit. And this has nothing to do with our software and everything to do with the difference between RAM and SSD speeds, period. There's nothing I can do, or not much you can do to alleviate that. It all comes down to how well can you predict what the future is going to be and put it in cache. Well, predicting the future is a really hard problem. So particularly predicting the future with minimum overhead in the present, is even harder problem. So that's, I think I've got a pretty good system for that, and so forth. But that's going to be the defining factor. Is we can have lots of storage if the transaction rate is low, or we can have a high transaction rate with a lot of data that fits in cache. What we can't do is have really high transaction rate with really large amount of data that is randomly being accessed. There's just the limits of the hardware that are working against us there. But the software should be more flexible than EOS and Chainbase was for EOS and Hive, because it's not, the memory layout used in memory was very, very inefficient on disk. And so we've closed the gap between those two substantially with what we're doing.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, we've got about 5 minutes before we go into the breakout room. Anyone have any additional questions or comments? Feel free to raise your hand. A lot of things have been posted in the last week. If you haven't had a chance yet, maybe try to catch up on all the things that have been posted, because it is quite a lot to absorb. Hey, Mike.
Oh, double muted. Good morning, everybody. I wanted to let everyone know we have been clarifying the recent addendum proposal. There were some points in there that we knew were needed some clarification. That was talked about, I think, in the post-meeting, pre-meeting as well as post-meeting, I think. Some people asked for that. So we have a document that I was adding to it 4 o'clock in the morning last night. And as soon as we're agreed that that accurately represents everything, we'll get that out, just so that this is a well-defined proposal down to the math. Otherwise, there's a lot of opportunity for mystery as that happens. So we'll get that out.
The original proposal said it could be A or B because it was more of a general direction versus getting too caught up on the specific numbers. So we're going to fine-tune the exact mathematical parameters to implement the inflation decay as basically a half-life continuous function, and the way we're doing the average from week to week, we're going to fine-tune those parameters so that and all that's going to be baked into the spreadsheet that's going to be calculating things. So I'd like to thank Mike for his hard work in tracking that down at those late hours. Thank you, Mike.
Sure.
Somebody made a comment about how Eric says, seems like a fast rollout, actually. Things are actually moving quite fast, if you think about it. Pretty impressive.
Yeah, this the community effort and flexibility and our model of testing this, I think, allows us to move very fluidly. And that's not to be underestimated. The result of this proposal is that it's more valuable to participate earlier than later in terms of the final token distribution, because every single week it's going to be on a decay, kind of like Bitcoin does, except every week it's slightly less tokens are distributed than the week before. So it's more valuable to participate this week than next week, even if there's same number of participants and you get the same level. So that is one of the major incentives for people to show up early and take risks when it's as chaotic and potentially ill-defined as it is right now. Yes, Jason.
Hey, can you say a little bit about what it's going to look like when we have an interface other than Zoom to do these kind of meetings, just to prepare everybody for what's coming with that?
If you saw the video we put out, that was a preview of the interface.
I did,
Effectively, it'll be a web interface powered by WebRTC, which will have, you'll show up on a website, and anyone will be able to host this website. So it's not necessarily going to be tied to our company. And you'll automatically be put into the room that you're supposed to be in. So there won't be this pre-meeting session. Formally, if there is a pre-meeting, it might be still on Zoom, and then we have like a 10-minute delay to allow everyone to switch over to the app to go actually into the meeting. But basically, you go to your browser, you're taken right into your meeting. You move the participants up and down until your interface agrees with everyone else's interface, and then you hit submit and you're done. And then those that are going on to round 2 will automatically just be put into the round 2 group, 15 minutes later. And so it would be relatively simple to manage, and the WebRTC was working really well. So a lot of the problems we have today of having to type in the chat 3, 2, 1 go, or trying to go top to bottom, is just you have a discussion as people rank, you either say, oh, everyone agrees that this is level 6. You might not even had to have a discussion on it, because as everyone was moving the things around on their UI, it just said, oh, yep, you're in agreement. And you can go on and you can focus on, hey, we're not in agreement on this person. Let's talk about where you guys put so and so forth, and you can sort it out. So I think the interface will be really, really refined. It was a pleasure to use when I was using the earlier version, and with more indicators on there. So you'll be able to experience this with our testnet. The results won't be logged on chain, but the process of reaching consensus is something that everyone will be able to participate in. And then we'll just copy that and put it over on Hive for the time being. And then as we refine and get results from the 2-round process, it's time to do breakout rooms. Talk to y'all later.
Didn't want to interrupt you, but rooms are open. Here we go.
A nice background, very relaxing.
Thanks. Dan? Hello, Dan. Are you here with us? Yeah, same. You guys. Yeah, I'm pretty new in the scene. And Oscar, welcome. That's
all
fine.
good to me.
Yes. I can start to introduce myself if you want, guys. Yes, I'm Marcus. I pretty new in the Fractally community. That's my 4th meeting. The last one I missed because I was sick, but I really enjoyed it. And yeah, basically I'm working for EU support, doing articles and translating. And at the moment I'm also working on an audiobook of More Equal Animals, which I translated from English to German last year, together with a group from USBs and your support and other people. And yeah, starting to learn more about fractal democracy and enjoy the process. about it.
Awesome.
Cool.
Thank you very much, Marcus. It's great to hear you doing a bunch of really super interesting and helpful things.
Thanks.
Um, so Matt shared something in the chat about briefly introducing ourselves and answering 3 questions like we do here. Have you participated in one of these meetings before, Marcus, or is this your first time?
Yeah, it's the 4th meeting I participate
That's
in.
great news.
So yeah, I can continue, like, what did I do for Fractally in the last week? I continued editing the audiobook I'm recording at the moment, and and I continue educating people about fractal democracy. There's a good article from James Mart, and I translated it to German on the EU support page. And I like to share this article with people. It's about 10 to 15 pages long, and people can get a little bit of a grasp what's fractal democracy. And yeah, that's what I did in the last week. And last week, I think I ranked 0 because I didn't attend the meeting. And the week before, I ranked 6. So I think if you miss a meeting, it's 0, right?
You don't get any for, you don't personally get anything for that meeting, yes.
Yes. So it's my pitch, and my pitch. It's for, yeah, I did a Pomelo pitch as well for the audio.
Thank you, Marcus. I really value your work on More Equal Animals, reading it, education, translation. To me, that's the education piece is the, I really value those contributions. So thank you for that. I'll post in into the chat what I'll be reviewing in the next 3 minutes. These are my contributions for the past week. I'll do it in blocks because it's so you don't have to, so it's not an eye chart for you. Last week I was ranked level 6. And this is my 19th meeting out of 22. I'll briefly introduce myself. My name is Matt Langston. I'm a physicist and a system software engineer for Apple. And fractal governance is a passion of mine, and this is something I do part-time. But my full-time job is working for Apple. So I had no invites to our Fractal last week. I published the article last week, a model-independent method to measure uncertainties in fractal governance consensus algorithms. This is part of what this was discussed. The ideas were discussed last week with Dan. I had an extended discussion with Dan. I would encourage you to go back and look at that. I thought it was a fascinating discussion. I wrote an article, published it last week, and there's a link to it there. I advised a PhD student and a fellow Genesis member on their fractal governance dissertation. So I'm really excited to see this starting to be taken seriously by academia, people wanting to write dissertations about it. So I'm very honored and humbled to be asked to help guide the ideas that are forming this person's dissertation. Post the next thing here. I was I had some significant contributions to the Fractally white paper, Addendum 1. So I didn't write it, but I was a member of the voting council last week that passed it. I was a yes vote on it. Dan said he thought it was almost a unanimous. I think it was unanimous. I think they were all, there were no no's for it. I was acknowledged today, gratefully, I was acknowledged today by Dan Larimer as helping his team think through new perspectives on fractal governance. So that article I wrote up that I discussed previously was, I think that spurred a lot of new thinking. I was happy I could be a part of that and have them sort of think through some things about our Genesis fractal. I'm really one of the things I care about most is trying to understand the nature of what we're doing so I can help harden it against future attacks. I want this to take off and be successful, and I try to bring value and trying to understand how we can prevent people from trying to take us down once we take off. I was also acknowledged by Josh Seymour today in a pre-meeting as having provided valuable discussions with him and some of the Fractally team on how to deploy the upcoming Addendum 1 changes. It was a little more challenging than we thought. Like it's very well described in the Addendum 1, but how did you actually deploy it? That was a challenge. Some fun, challenging problems that we talked through that I helped them talk through. That was a lot of fun. And then I also had last week several private discussions with members of Team Fractally on sort of statistical data analysis and some first principles behind it. I'm glad to see that they're sort of taking a relook at that and integrating that into their thinking. I continue to lead small group discussions on more equal animals, Marcus, and all. Dan Larimer agreed to add a glossary and an index to the book based on feedback from one of my students. So we have these small group discussions, and they're clamoring for a glossary and an index to help them study and to help them teach others. I want them to start their own small groups and discuss it. And they're telling me, Matt, we need these two tools to help us be your ambassadors. And I was grateful that Dan acknowledged, yes, I will. If somebody will create that, I will add it to my book. And those last two links are, I created the what we're calling the Genesis Uncertainty Observatory. It's a link to a real-time dashboard that updates as we continue to add our Genesis data to it. Take a look at that. And then I also created and maintain the dashboard that tracks our weekly progress. So that's number 8 there. Take a look at that when you get a chance. Those are my contributions last week. And I'd like to hear from, just next on my screen is Eric. Eric, could you take it away?
Thank you. That's exciting. All the points that you've been able to manage this past week. Maybe at some point you can, I'm curious where that student found you. I'm in the Republic of Georgia, and I've been here for a long time, and I don't know how many meetings that I've been at, but my whole purpose and goal was to try and figure out how to bring this into the business that we started to do something good for the city. And I've been challenged with the idea of public goods versus private goods. And I've successfully invited a local friend of mine who unfortunately can't make it today because this would have been his second time. He's traveling back from Latvia. But it's going to take, I'm quite interested also, Matt, in the way that you been able to gain traction on academia, or I don't have any political background or knowledge in that field, but I think that might be a strategic segment of the society here to bring on and work through maybe like a discussion group and not start inside the business, start in that academic segment. But I'm kind of hoping that my friend Mark, it's sort of, it's hard to do things by yourself. So just having a little bit of relationship and someone to meet on a regular basis and build some momentum, I think will be key. And I've been inviting my leadership team, but they're not, English is not their first language. So that would be a bit of a challenge. So I haven't done particularly much this week other than maintain those relationships. And I continue to think about how to, one thing that we're also doing is rolling out our own ERP IT system that's gone live for about 2 weeks now, and we're in the middle of that chaos. But it would be quite interesting for me, as Dan just explained, the software, the UI or the UX, be very interesting for me to have basically like a 360 peer review on a regular basis, weekly basis for the team, particularly to measure things that are very difficult to measure. Things like the reason we started the business was to run it on core values and not just as a profit model. So we're driven by our core values, and it's very difficult to measure that. But I think Fractally could potentially help us see who's delivering on that. And it would be quite interesting if the Fractal grew beyond the team into the realm of stakeholders. So that's where I'm at. I will pass it to Oscar.
Hello. I think the first time I am in the same room with Eric and Marcus. Nice to meet you. It's nice meeting you. Always nice meeting new people and seeing new faces. I've been in here. I think from the 4th or so Fractally meeting ever, and I haven't really counted how many I've been to. Like several. I'll count them later. Never missed one so far, and I'm part of the EOS Translation Foundation team on Fractally. We put together through some work and effort a Pomelo pitch this week, and well, not this week. We've been working on it for a while now, but this week it got published, as you know. And Dwayne is doing the effort to take it on his shoulders to onboard all the people from Translate Me Network, which is the team, the people that has the machine learning engine to offer the translation services. So Dwayne is the one that is taking upon his shoulders to onboard all these people onto EOS, and to hopefully, with some time after they do that, after they get more acquainted with the way we work, with fractal governance through Fractally, we hope that this comes to a reality too. And so far, the Pomelo pitch is focused on how this onboarding is going to happen. And Dwayne is already doing a lot of this work, and we just got out of a meeting right before the Fractally pre-meeting, where we were talking about how things are going and all the development so far of this initiative, which is basically aiming for including more people into our communities. Because so far, the way I see it and the way I feel it is that so far the English community is the one with the privilege of being in here, and the ones that are bilingual. So many people, Marcus, you're from Germany, I suppose, and you're German, so you can be here because you speak English, but you are doing the translation work because it is valuable to your local community, and your language community is gonna have the benefit from it once it is in their own language, which is a lot easier than teaching all the Germans English. And we're aiming to, lower that gap as much as possible. And this is where the Pomelo pitch is going, which you're familiar with Pomelo. I'm not gonna put it on the chat because you'll find it there. You'll find it there if you look for it. But basically this is the way we're going in the team. We just had a pre-Fractally meeting, which we talked about it. And as for myself, as for my personal contributions, I've been active in I attended the last Eden Fractal meeting last Wednesday, and we had a bit of a discussion about fractal governance in there. I was helping Igor and I don't remember the name of the new legend. I was helping them about some things after we finished the meeting, and it's been pretty amazing. That's what I want to say. We're going to be sharing all the information about Fractally and how we're leveraging the fractal governance in Fractally through this developers and this onboarding program, and we hope everything goes well so far. That's all I have to say now. And next to my screen is Dan. Dan.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Oscar. Thank you very much for all the great work, of course, and thank you, everybody.
Look at my eye bags. Jesus Christ, this takes so much time. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
What's he said? Look at your eye bags. Are you tired or something?
Yeah, I have eye bags, man. I haven't been sleeping well.
Okay, well, I hope that you can sleep better. I understand that you're doing a lot of work, and the same thing happens to me sometimes too, more often than I like. But yeah, I appreciate the work, and I hope you can get better sleep while you're doing it in the future too. So I'll share a bit of a presentation here. Hopefully it works here. Oh, yeah. I'll start off by saying that I've been sick for most of the past week, so I haven't been able to focus as much on promoting fractal governance as I would want to and like to, but I've still been doing my best despite that with the time that I have. And yep, so I hosted the Eden Fractal event this week, and it was a great event. I'm going to make the window a bit bigger. I don't know if I can do that on the fly here because I didn't have a chance to set it. Sorry for the messed up presentation. For some reason, it got out of order. But yeah, I hosted the Eden Fractal, the 8th meeting this week, and I posted the video on the Eden Creators YouTube channel. It was a great event. There was 18 people who showed up. Rock Pier showed up for a bit, which is great, and Oscar was there, so thank you very much, Oscar. And we had lots of discussions. We're planning to do a lot of the things that the current Fractally Genesis is doing, such as the Fractally Contributor Agreement and formal governance process and so forth. So lots of things that we're working on here, and these events are going really well. I've managing the Eden Fractal Twitter account, so I put out a tweet. We've been a bit behind because we had some smart contract issues, so I put out the week 6 the week 6 distributions of EOS and Respect and NFT tweet this week, and then I also put out a thank you tweet for Patrick because Patrick donated 600 EOS and then has just been doing a bunch of stuff to help both the Eden Fractal and Fractally and also EOS in general. So I put out a tweet there, help promote it, and then retweeted Patrick's tweet talking about that. And also Chris Barnes, who's a chief delegate and a big community member in Eden and EOS, he also promoted too. So I retweeted this as well from both my accounts and other accounts. I've been working quite a bit on doing redesigns for the websites for both Eden Fractal and Eden Creators. So this is like a pretty early draft, so it doesn't really look very good yet, but I've been working a lot on making art to make it look good, because right now the Eden Fractal site isn't too great, but I'm going to make it basically so it's very simple with just a couple buttons. There's going to be videos too, so everybody can see all the videos from all the Eden Fractal events. Felix and I have both been doing videos, as well as a couple other people, and details. So yeah, I've been also James Mart recommended this cardioid shape, which is it's got some really cool metaphors too, which is going with Fractally and the Mandelbrot set as well. So that's just kind of an early draft right now of what the home page could be like. And then yeah, here's what the video page could look like, which is pretty similar to the YouTube playlist, which I showed you before. And then I've also been just updating the details page too, including some art and just kind of laying out guidelines and rules and what people can expect and so forth from joining the Eden Fractal events. I'll go pretty quick because no, I don't have too much time. And then the Eden Creator site, I've been working on empowering creators and communities with Web3, helping everyone cooperate fractally to make the best experience possible. I've been simplifying this site, and I also made some art and some pictures here for linking to the Eden Fractal, to the Fractally Genesis and stuff like that, videos you can watch and about and read and garden and stuff like that. So again, it's early drafts. I've also been working on just improving the Eden Creators YouTube channel, which is quite young, but collecting videos from Eden Fractal and different Eden events and the Alien Worlds Fractal and so forth, and different EOS things. And then I've also been, as a chief delegate, participating in Eden Chief Delegate meetings and advocating for fractal governance more, and also doing a little bit of that on the Heliosphere space yesterday too. And then I've also just been reading and retweeting a lot too this week too. So just been retweeting Dan's tweets and then engaging with all of them, reading the new articles. Also been reading Matt's work, so thank you very much, Matt, for all you've been doing. It's super, super helpful. Yeah, so I've been reading all these articles, just trying to learn what everybody's saying. James Mart wrote a couple great articles that I read as well. So I'd highly recommend reading all these to learn more. And also Das wrote a really interesting white paper, which I've read some of so far, which is about fractal governance and blockchains and so forth. And then just been, following along. Joshua also suggested this tool too, so I've been checking that out. And then I've also been following the BitShares Fractal and in communication with Thomas, one of the members there. So, and I'll be interested to help. I'll be interested to help with the BitShares Fractal when the time is right. But that's that. And thank you everybody for listening. Hope that helped and made sense.
Thanks, Dan. Could you go back 2 slides?
Sure. 2 slides to this slide right here.
One more.
Okay.
Yeah, go up to the top.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you for that. I have not read that one yet.
You're welcome.
Thank you for bringing that to my attention.
I can send you the link if you'd like, and you're welcome. And to Das also, I think he recently posted it in the Fractally Genesis group as well as on the Go Fractally site too. But I'd be happy to send you a link if you can't find it.
Thank you. Thank you, Dan.
You're welcome.
Something I wanted to add very quickly before we start the.
Dan is in there. I wanted to add the fractal fiction event that is coming up on next Sunday. Dan is in there.
Oscar, you just change your microphone setup, or you're just me?
Oscar, we are having trouble to hear you.
Yeah, just not coming through very good, Oscar.
Yeah, right now I don't hear you at all.
Could you listen?
I heard you say.
All right.
It sounds good now.
Yeah, that was my watch getting in the way. The Fractal Fiction event that is coming up on Sunday. So if you're interested in being in there, Dan is one of the ones that is going to be in there. And some of the good folks that surely you know already. So if you're interested in jumping in and participating, it's going to be on Sunday. What time again, Dan?
Sunday at 15 UTC. So like 22 hours from now. Yeah. And thank you for the reminder, Oscar. I'm looking forward to participating in that, and I encourage people to participate in that too. If people haven't heard about that, it's Lars, who's a great artist, who's doing I don't know if it's using the Eden process, the Eden election process, or the Fractally process. I'm not quite sure, but it's using a governance process to help write a fiction book or fiction artwork of some sort, which sounds really interesting. And feel free to correct me if I got that wrong, Oscar. I'm still learning about it as well. But thank you very much.
So interesting. Hey, Oscar, I want to tell you, this is your 14th meeting. And last week you were number 26 on the leaderboard. And I know this because you're listed on our dashboard. So if you look at that last link I put in my updates, it's easy to find your attendance and where you're where you rank among your peers.
It's not loading yet, but very interesting. I'm gonna check. I know that if I go to the Fractally to the Go Fractally page, I'm gonna find it. But just didn't want to interrupt the flow of the conversation. Just go back and check. But yeah, I'm trying to load it now.
How do you expand the data?
I think I'm interested in the Fractal Fiction event. So if you have time at that time, forget the redundancy, that would be amazing to have you there.
Eric, you were saying something?
I got it. Show all, so I didn't quite see that. That's really cool.
Matt, it was super nice to hear that you're including a glossary in the book. I did this for the German version as well, because I thought, man, there's so many people who don't understand what Dan is talking about, especially the non-techies. So I'm really interested to see your new version, to update mine as well.
So Marcus, I got Dan to agree to add a glossary and index. So I haven't created it yet. And that was my pitch as a shovel-ready job. So if you already have created an index, we should translate that to English.
Well,
that would be
I don't
awesome.
know. I created it, but only for the basic like abbreviations and stuff. Normal people don't know, you know, and they who are not coming from who don't have a technological background. So that's why I created it. But I mentioned also in the beginning of the translation that it's not Dan's work, but it's the work of the translation group, which tries to lessen the steps for the beginners to understand what he's talking about. You know, that was the aim, to create a book for normal people. You know?
Awesome. That's my focus too, is the non-technical and the highly technical. That's kind of the two camps I try to service.
Great
All
group.
right.
Nice to learn what you all have been done. I'm really impressed.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Same here.
So how do we want to reach consensus? This is always the funnest part. This is like the messiest part. And like, who knows what we're going to come up with? We always come up with something and we always scramble near the end oftentimes. So how do we want to do this?
In the Eden Fractal last time I got with, or was in the last in Fractal? I don't remember which if it was in the Eden Fractal or the Fractally Fractal. We used the Galaxy.do tool from Igor, and I found it very, very, very interesting. Very
You guys
cool.
want to try it? I've never tried it. You guys want to try it?
I'm interested.
Can you post a link so we can take a look at it, Oscar? And if I guess if we decide we want to do it, we can give it a go.
Do we know how much time we have?
We've got 15 minutes left.
Okay.
Exactly 15 minutes. And that's a good, while he's posting the link or while we're bringing it up, that's a good reminder. Like if we fail to reach consensus by 10, then we get none of us get anything. So that's part of the challenge. Do we want to take the risk of trying something new, or do we want to go with old school? Or I'm up for anything, whatever you guys want.
It's very simple to use. It's not that complicated.
Okay. I'm up for anything too. Something I did use this tool like I don't know, a couple months ago, and I liked it. Although there were a couple of things that I wasn't sure about or didn't particularly like about it. Like one thing is that it automatically ranks yourself as the person. I'm certainly not explaining this very nearly as well as it could be, but it makes it so that by default you are voting for yourself to be the level that's being ranked, which I think is kind of biasing it a bit. But I'm happy to use it though, if you guys would like.
What room are we in?
7.
7.
7?
See, this is what Matt said. It automatically selects you as if you were voting for yourself in that level.
That's pretty
But,
lame.
knowing that this is the case, we can avoid thinking that, or clarifying that I am actually voting for myself in here or not, just in case. I have nothing against voting for yourself, by the way, if you want to.
Yeah, same here. My reason bringing it up was just that it caused confusion in the past time I use it, because somebody forgot to click in and it looked like they're voting for themselves. It'd be nice if it started where they weren't voting for anybody first. That would be the one thing I would change about it. But it's not really a major problem, so I'm happy to go ahead and use it.
I'm not clear how this. I don't think that's very intuitive, actually.
All right, if it's too complicated because we're running out of time, we could just do it the usual way,
No,
1,
I
2,
think
3, go.
the way that's worked in the past, the most just kind of obvious places, we just count down 3, 2, 1, put it in the chat there, and we all put level 6, level 5, level 4. We go that way.
Eric, you want to lead us that way? Do you want to like put in the -- level 6, and then we'll do the 3, 2, 1 countdown?
Sure. Not sure about the -- but just do
or whatever, just so it's clear what level we're.
Level 6, then type in the person that you voting for the top highest level. And I guess
Everybody
these are,
ready?
does everyone have their
I'm just gonna write the name and then I'll get the account.
five?
Yeah, that works.
Okay. So 3. Let me get mine in first.
Everybody ready? Marcus,
3.
you ready to go?
You guys ready? All right.
Yep.
3, 2, 1, 0. Go.
Okay, looks like Matt got unanimous support there.
Thank you very much,
You're welcome.
everyone.
It's awesome that you're knocking it out of the park. Level
Mhm.
5 coming up next.
Okay, ready?
And I can't talk and type at the same moment.
Yeah,
So
I appreciate this, Eric.
We ready?
Yep.
3,
Yep.
2, 1, 0. Let's go. Looks like Dan's got it.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
Level 4. So everyone ready?
Yep.
3, 2, 1, 0. Let's go. We got a
Yeah, this is a good one. We have to do some decoding here.
So we have basically a tie.
So we have what? Marcus, Eric, Oscar. Yeah, so there's definitely no consensus yet.
Let me change mine to Oscars, and that's what I'll do.
I was gonna change mine too.
Oh, well, I'd be happy to take it. I'm
gonna change my vote to Marcus.
Okay, I'll change mine to Marcus too. Wait. As Marcus, I'm just gonna write Marcus like this, and I'll get the account later.
I think Marcus got it, to be honest. Yeah. I mean, people that are working on either the actual software or the actual products, I think should be ranked or have the highest levels. And
well, what I value about Marcus is the focus on more equal animals, on first principles, on education. That's what really spoke to me. That always speaks to me. That's kind of near and dear to my heart.
Yeah. So I think we have our level 4, right? Or not?
Yes, I'm also happy to change to Marcus too. I was also going to advocate for Oscar too, because I think that Oscar is doing excellent work. I mean, both in being here, helping with the Eden Fractal, helping with the Translation Foundation, and the stuff that the Translation Foundation is doing sounds really cool and really helpful for Fractally as well. The stuff that you're talking about that Dwayne is leading too, and it's also kind of representing the Translation Foundation team too. So I can go on and on about all the great stuff that Oscar is doing. But I'm happy to also vote for Marcus as level 4 too. I'm happy either way.
As it stands, I think he has it. He has 3 out of 5. So okay. Level 3.
Okay.
Are we ready?
Yep. I'm ready.
3, 2, 1, 0. Let's go. Okay, good job, Oscar. So someone put those in the chat. I guess if you guys
I'll take a stab. I think we should all take a stab because I may misspell.
Oh yeah. It's like this.
Did you do it? Oh. Marcus, your macro Moste, are you already in here somewhere?
Yes, I'm Marco Namaste.
Okay. So I'm going to try. Oh, somebody did it. Marcus, thank you.
Is it right? Maybe there's.
That's the right order, I think. But we need to get rid of the @hive and put an ampersand in front of Oscar. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
Does there have to be an ampersand on the format?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we want to remove the comma from the end of the recent chats.
Okay, Oscar posted one. I think this looks good. Yeah. Okay.
Everybody check your name.
Seems good to me. Good here.
I love the fact that we tried to use the tool and it was a little confusing. I think that is awesome feedback. We all need to give feedback to the person who created this. I would want this. If I created the tool and there was like the slightest bit of confusion, I would want to know. So I think we're experimentalists, and I think that's great feedback. Does someone, I don't know who created it, but I would love to meet them or to talk with them or work with them.
It was created by Igor.
Yeah,
Igor, I'm not sure. What's that, Oscar?
Igor, him.
Yes.
He's around.
Okay.
To be fair, that's what I thought at the beginning too. I was a little confused of how it worked. But then being in the same room, I asked him how it worked, and he can explain it to me. And after that, it was simple. The thing is that as we didn't have a lot of time, maybe we got cold feet because of it. If anyone has a link to the Hive post.
Well, I will introduce myself to him and give him that feedback. I love that we tried something new and we were able to pivot at the last second and go old school. I think we should give that feedback to Dan and team back in the main room. If somebody wants to volunteer that kind of our experience, we're experimentalists, and I know that they would super value their trying and pivoting, and we were still able to make the system work. I kept track. It took us 24 minutes for our pitches. We're allocated 18 for 6 members. We're 5, and it took us 24 minutes. So we kind of went over budget, which is normal. But we're able to squeeze that consensus process into the last few minutes.
And it went pretty simply, except for that was quite interesting. I voted for Marcus, and then no one else had. And you guys then 2 people changed their votes. That was quite.
The reason I did was I thought, what is this outlier? What did I miss? And then I thought, wait a minute, Marcus did all this great work with the More Equal Animals, and I gave him a lot of praise, and I just missed it. I just did a brain, my brain kind of did. Then I had to kind of step back and look at our group and go, I think this, if I have to force rank, I've got to split the hairs this way. So it was you that caused me to change my mind, to make me rethink, Eric.
Good.
All these process is always so interesting and so entertaining at the same time. I think it's very valuable because we need to study. We get to study what other people dance, and this part of the meeting is also one of my favorites because we get to freely talk about what we're doing and share a little bit more about our experiences. This is amazing.
I remember Dan saying something about the interface or the UI would have also links to social and other things that are happening, sort of just to get a broader picture of, is this person legit? Because in the future, if this gets to hundreds of people, you won't be able to keep up with, you won't know people in the group that you're in. And so having a way to do some forensic background checks or something like that could be helpful.
Did everyone put their vote on Josh's page yet for our consensus?
No, I haven't done that. No.
So we agree that last one is good.
Are the
Right.
last two the same, or was there a difference?
I copied and pasted the last one from Oscar, which I assumed was, everyone agreed that that was.
Yep.
All right.
The last, okay, I'll just copy Eric's then, assuming that's correct. And
Just
by
in
the way,
case you don't
Matt,
have it all. Sorry, go ahead, Dan.
okay, I was gonna say, I think you probably saw it, but I pasted the Telegram account for Gore, so you can reach out to him there directly if you want, or
Thank you.
elsewhere. You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. And then also the white paper too that the DOS read as well.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Thank
I
you,
posted
Dan.
it as well. There's 2 posts now from our group, I think. Sometimes I get a problem with the posts and I have to do it over peak D, and then it works. I don't know if this is a glitch or it just relates to my browser. I use the Brave browser. But this
I
time,
use Ecency on my phone. It works very well.
okay, awesome.
Ecency.
I won't be sad when we stop using Hive.
Great, guys.
I feel like, I'm sorry if I interrupted you. What were you saying, Marcus?
No, I just want to say, in case anybody wants to support the project of the audiobook as well, you can find me on Pomelo. That would be really nice.
Thank you, Marcus.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll look for. Is there anything to look for in specific, like just having more animals and it'll come up, or?
Yeah, and since we're here, I think I didn't see the Eating Fractal Pomelo pitch.
I don't know. Felix put one up. I'm also planning on doing an Eden Creators pitch, which will help Eden Fractal as well. But Felix put up one specifically for Eden Fractal that he shared during the Eden Fractal, and I think you saw it, but I haven't looked at it yet, so I don't know if it was approved or if it's fully on there or not. Also, I think I mentioned End Instantly too. So just thanks everybody for the great meeting. It was great seeing you all. But I'm sorry, Oscar, what were we saying?
The last time I checked, we hadn't been approved, and I think that was yesterday.
Okay. I'm not sure.
No, I'm not sure either. It could have changed.
Yeah, we'll see. Hopefully it gets approved. Felix kind of just took the initiative there and just started up. I wasn't aware he was doing it before he announced it during the meeting on Wednesday, and I haven't looked into it since then. I've been kind of out of it for this week, so.
Matt, any suggestions? Sorry. Matt, any suggestions for getting a discussion group going here in this city?
How to create one around the book?
I mean, that might be the place to start, isn't it? The local language here, Georgian
So
language.
the way I do things is I have a camper van that I go and travel around in, and have adventures in, and my first stop in any new little town is the library. I introduce myself to the librarian. The people, the curious people of the town tend to go to the library, and that's where I start, and that's where I've had success. So I would start there and introduce yourself to the librarian. Maybe give him or her a copy of the book. Ask her to have small group discussions, and could you advertise for one? I think that might be where I would start in your local community.
Interesting.
That's a good idea. Yes, the curious people go to the library. I like that. I'm creating the audiobook for.
Recording in progress.
Welcome back, everyone. Hey, Matt.
Hi, Josh. I would like to ask a general call to action to our members. I would like it to be, now that we have more than one fractal, we have our Genesis fractal and there's other fractals. I would like to relate our data sets to one another. And I don't know where the other fractals data sets are. So if you're interested in this too, and you know how to do this, or you can get your hands on the data, reach out to me privately, and maybe we can work together and we can build a little dashboard for your fractal, and we can start looking at how our membership is shared and kind of how we communicate. This came from the idea of reading James Smart's article he has this idea of, he thinks it's interesting to look at sort of the ordering and momentum. I'll just call it ordering, like how we, is there a general, or he looks at us as like, we're all going in slightly different directions, but the fractal is going in a direction and we're all rowing slightly differently, but there's enough of us going in one direction. And I'd like to start exploring that. And we could only do that by looking at the other fractals, how they operate, try to correlate the two. So please reach out to me privately if you have some insight or if you'd just like to help me working on this.
Yes, thank you very much for putting that information together and sharing it with the community. Very, very much appreciated. I'd like to call out Pascal. He was in my group today. He made a Genesis Fractal t-shirt. He's got wearing and he's been sharing it. Otherwise, I just want to acknowledge that that's something tangible, real world, and he's wearing it not just on these calls but in meetups. So I'd like to thank him for those things. And I really do think that things like t-shirts and whatnot are a good way to show community spirit, team spirit, and I would encourage that as a way to have fun. And so, yeah, that's a valuable contribution in my own right. So he can show you how you can create t-shirts, or anyone can take the logo, and there's various t-shirt companies out there that will make things. So have fun and do that type of thing. Gregory, you have a question?
Yes, I just wanted to remind everyone, Joshua did post onto Hive the link with which we are to post our consensuses. Some people haven't posted. I know that at this particular point in time, you do have up to an hour after the meeting, but we encourage you to do it fairly immediately. Next week, when we make changes to our platform, that requirement will go down to within 5 minutes of leaving the breakout session. So if you haven't already done so, please take your consensus list and post it to the Hive post that Joshua's put there in the chat window. Thank you.
It looks like there's 37 replies out of 38 people currently on the call. So I think we're doing pretty good. Felix.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I just want to kind of add to what Matt was saying. I appreciate that. I'll definitely be reaching out for the Eden Fractal. We would love to have you guys over. And that's something that, I want to open the invitation to everyone here to the Eden Fractal. We're working on setting up teams, and once teams are set up, I would love to have the Fractally team, come and declare over on the Eden Fractal. I think that would help a ton with, kind of a lot of the FUD that's going around of like basically everyone thinking that, or not everyone, but, the people who are FUDing thinks that, Dan, that you and the Fractally team have left. And, we know that's not the case. And so I think that would be a great gesture if you guys formed a team over there, and then, if a member or would come and participate, every week, just sending a member or representative of the team, that would help really kind of bridge and get rid of the, the FUD that we have certain members kind of pushing, and that's one of our biggest things over on the Eden Fractals. We want to bridge the gap and take what you're doing with this technology and bringing it over to EOS, and just showing that, hey, we can collaborate and work together, but we can all do it in our own independent way as well. So.
All right, I acknowledge the request. I will share with you the challenges we face. Not that we don't want to support every single fractal, but as we've seen, we're going to have a BitShares fractal. We're going to we have all these other fractals showing up. Every single a Hive fractal maybe, and pretty soon, that would have our team divided up among all these different things. And that's a challenge we face. Now, I want to support it, and I acknowledge the request there. And I want to deal with the FUD and all those other things. But that's just the challenge. Is at what point we can't be part of every single fractal. That's just a fact. And so I think the best way that we can support all fractals is through what we're doing with the Genesis fractal. and to encourage the Genesis Fractal to support the Eden Fractal with what they're doing. But that said, I will talk it over with the team. Thank you.
Okay, sweet. Thank you, Daniel. And real quick to kind of, I guess, add to your comments. Yeah, obviously I saw somewhere it was like that's a tall order. Obviously the team part, declaring the team, I can see that being a big team, but showing up to a couple meetings too, though, I think would just generally be a great, gesture whenever, if you guys can make the time. But yeah, I appreciate that you guys are going to take that into consideration, and would love to see some of you guys over there. And yeah, so thank you.
All right, thank you. All right.
Hey guys, yeah, regarding what Felix just said, there were some questions in the Eden Fractal meeting, whether Fractally is taking value from EOS, and I wanted to let you guys know that we as a team, me personally, did a very strong case that we are actually contributing to the EOS ecosystem, and that we are creating a symbiotic relationship, and we are helping for these two communities to thrive together. So I wanted to let you know, guys, that we as a team, as the Fractal team, have a voice over there, which is really compelling towards collaboration.
Yeah, if I could restate something I said in my breakout room for everyone here. Having all of my past projects, BitShares, Hive, EOS, and Fractally, all brought together and enhanced by the Fractal governance. I look at like why did I have to leave BitShares? Because the governance process was voting not to fund public goods of my team. And so the team needed to feed itself. And so we created Hive or Steam with the intent of creating a better voting mechanism to reach consensus, right? Trying to solve the same problem. And then, that kind of started to break down when Ned was using the full weight of Steam's to like hammer me down on every single post I made. And so forth. So we always have these problems where you have some governance structure, and I've been trying to solve governance structures the entire time. The problem is once you set up a governance structure, it doesn't necessarily want to change or adapt or adopt a new thing. But I started BitShares, and before BitShares, I had this thing I post on Bitcoin Talk about the island nation. I was trying to solve governance from the beginning, and having a currency and a token and all those other things has been the common thread that flows through all the projects I've been working on. And so I really do believe that what we're solving here with fractal governance is a direct solution to problems every single blockchain has, and then we can add value to those blockchains if they are willing to embrace it. Right? You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. And that's and so there's a value disagreement here. So the concept that are we taking value away from EOS, or are we contributing value? I think we're creating the opportunity of value for EOS, and whether or not EOS is able to fully realize the value we're offering it is kind of up to that community and their choices. But I do agree that I believe that fractal governance adds value to everything out there, and I want to bring it to all communities that value decentralization, that value independence of people, that value voluntary association, and want to prevent the concentration of power in the hands of incumbents. I think those are the values that all blockchains at least profess to support, even if we disagree on the best approach to get there. So I appreciate you sharing the concerns about whether or not we're taking value away from EOS, or or not. But I think that mindset, scarcity mindset, we know that when people collaborate, they produce more value than they both contribute individually. And so I think collaboration with EOS and collaboration with Hive and BitShares will produce more value for both parties. If they are playing a zero-sum game and that's their culture, then they will destroy value for both parties. And so the only thing that will be destroying value is a lack of a spirit of collaboration. All right, Dan Singjoy.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. So I just was inspired to say something quickly. So one, maybe two things. So one, I completely agree with what you're saying, although I would add that even communities who don't know that they value decentralization and those things, we can still help them as well. And I love what you're saying earlier about how Fractally and our Fractal Genesis group can help all these different groups, because I completely agree that this will help all communities. And then the other thing I was going to say too, that just kind of going on what Felix was saying as well about inviting the Fractally team to, or the Fractally team and anybody in the Fractally Genesis group to join the Eden Fractal as well. You're welcome anytime to join, of course, and you're also welcome. I know you're also super busy with the work you're doing here, and that's super important too. You mentioned time being a limiting factor. Even if you guys wanted to just so even if you guys didn't have time on your own, but if you wanted to just hire somebody just to show up, then they would probably get a 6 in every meeting, and we'd love to be able to give some of the Eden respect to the Fractally team. So that's another option too. If you want to just hire somebody just to show up for 1 hour a week, then that's another option that could potentially work too.
That's we appreciate the invitation, and I definitely am going to discuss a strategy for how our team can contribute. Because one of the things that we have set as an internal goal of Fractally is once we get the core infrastructure up, we want to help fund and encourage and organize multiple fractals to be built on top of the platform in different domains. We're looking at a political party, or something that already has a structure and organization outside, but bringing this to that, maybe even outside of blockchain space to bring in fresh blood. But we definitely want to facilitate as many fractals as possible to form in as many areas. And we are definitely planning on hiring people to facilitate the creation of fractals. So there's definitely, that is part of our business plan as things grow. So thank you. Patrick, you have a question?
I have no question. I just want to advocate that you come into Eden Fractal on Wednesday, 13 UTC, and you will have all my respect, because I am funding a little bit this Eden Fractal, and that will be a nice contribution if you come in, and that's help a lot to go more with the fractal paradigm for the Eden on EOS iteration that some people are living there on their side, not seeing that the fractal paradigm is so important. And that's do some bridges with this world of Eden on EOS, going more and more to be fractal, because all is fractal in nature. And to see you come on Eden Fractal, that will be a second Dan into the Eden Fractal. So the real Dan the man. Respect to Dan Sinjoy, but so that would be very nice, because if there are 2 fractal to not miss during the week, that's Eden Fractal on the Wednesday and the Fractally Genesis one on the Saturday. So you are into the mood?
I appreciate the I think that's the 3rd invite to the Eden Fractal. If you want to, anyone else wants to second that motion, please just put it in the chat so we don't have to have the same thing. I do appreciate the invite. Thank you.
Thanks, Patrick.
Thank you.
Andrew.
Yeah, I have a clarification question regarding teams. I'm on the Eden Fractal team. I'm not the team lead. What I'm curious about is, as I understand it, when you're on a team and you go into a breakout room, you're representing your team. The confusion I have is around if the respect that the team earned, or the respect that people feel like the team deserves, does that go essentially to the team lead, or do
No.
all of the members of the team benefit from that? I see sort of benefits from either one.
I can answer some of this. There's going to be a team account. The team account is going to have a budget from the team. The team lead will be able to redistribute that budget among the team members, but with a time delay. Either 2/3 of the team members approve it, which will eliminate the time delay, or the team will change the team lead. But by default, the only thing required to distribute funds from the team is for the team lead to appoint things, and no one else object for a period of time. Then the funds are distributed among the team. So the team lead has kind of like passive control or passive automatic approval to distribute the funds, but not total control over the funds. The team has to at least be in passive consent to anything the team lead proposes for the distribution of funds. And of course, they can change their team lead at any time if they don't like what the current team leader is doing. So the idea there is to try to minimize the amount of blockchain activity that's actually required to get things done, the amount of proactiveness that's required, but still provide a degree of security the purpose of the team is to create a smaller group of people that's able to reach consensus on the distribution of funds. That smaller group of people is the accountability. And that's why the team lead does not have unilateral control to do whatever, because they need to be held accountable to their team's consensus. And that's the goal.
And then is the that distribution that the team gets, that the team lead decides how to dole out, is that, if I remember correctly, part of the 20% little bucket that like some of it goes to the mutual respect holders, some of it goes to the sort of social media. Is there 20% that goes to the team? Am I remembering that correctly?
There's a certain, basically, we're allocating shares in the inflation of the system, right? The inflation of the system has now been defined in this most recent proposal. Each week we're allocating shares. Since we don't have mutual respect right now, no shares are being allocated to that. Since we don't have the social media yet, no shares are being allocated to that. And by shares, I mean shares of the inflation. 50% of all inflation right now will be allocated to teams, and then the teams will be subdivided. And then those teams were reallocated to their team members into what we showed as their escrow fund. And then the team members will be able to draw down for that over time. And as they draw out of that escrow fund, the inviter, the person who invited them, will get their cut. So if you're on a team and the team allocates you funds, then when it becomes liquid tokens that you can transfer, that's when your inviter gets some into their escrow pool, and then when they withdraw their funds, it goes on to their inviter recursively, and so that in this way the value flows throughout the entire system.
Okay. So the benefits of being on a team are not necessarily in the consensus meetings, aside from sort of the benefit of bringing people together and being able to get more work done. It's just the additional distribution. So
yeah, a team is long-term relationships with people that you work with on a regular basis and and trust. And team members, because they're smaller and they know each other better, they can judge each other's contributions at a finer grain than the weekly meetings can. And it's easier to invite new people to the community to join your team because you're bringing them into a group and they can feel at home. versus inviting new people to this group where they're going to be in a group of random strangers and have no idea. You know, they might never even see you for maybe once a year in a random meeting. So it's harder to invite somebody to something that, you know, they're not going to be beside you and to walk through the whole process. So being on a team is about that type of accountability, and that's why you know, I'm contemplating the concept of you know, in the white paper I suggested 50-50 for lack of any other distribution. I just evenly divided it among the different things, but the community can choose to say, actually, we're going to distribute 60% of the budget through teams and only 40% of the budget through direct participation. The theory being that it's easier to identify teams that are doing good work and then to trust the teams to subdivide than it is to identify individuals that are doing good work. And so those are some of the variables that we can tweak and experiment with, depending on how things go. But for now, because we don't have the tooling, tracking all the accounting and management of team decisions is harder to do. So yeah, so basically when the chain launches and we start actually tracking this stuff for real, each team is going to have a large initial budget that they have to figure out how they're going to distribute to their members. So if you're on a team, I would suggest in your team meetings that you discuss, well, what is your policy going to be on how you subdivide that, and go from there. Brindleswan, you're muted. We can't hear you.
Locally. And if there's any contemplation of an incentive structure for local teams being developed that actually meet in person.
Can you repeat it? We didn't catch most of it. You just kind of faded in toward the end.
I was wondering if there are any teams that are meeting locally face to face, and if it's been contemplated to have an incentive structure to actually have people create teams locally and meet locally. Did you hear me that time?
Yep, I heard you loud and clear. I strongly support local teams. In fact, I suspect that as this grows, we're going to have fractals of fractals, and ideally, you would join your local fractal like you would join your local meetup. And so chances are that you'll want to have more people meeting locally and be on a local team, or at the very least, know many people locally who are in the same fractal as you. Because I think that is how we scale and can have better mutual aid and better impact on the world. But at this current stage, we've only got about 45 people that are showing up every single week. We're pretty scattered. What I would love to see is if someone could find a tool online that allows us to drop a pin on a map of where we're located, just so we can get an idea of where everyone is. Even if it's pseudo-anonymous, we can find out how many people are in each state or how many people in each city. And that might give us an idea of what the opportunities are for local meetups.
We could possibly do that using Freedom Cells. They have that tool for just people who want to meet locally to start forming groups. They don't have a governance model yet, but Derek Bro's Freedom Cells, if people are not familiar with that.
All right, cool. Yeah, share the link. Dwayne.
Good to see everybody. We've been running our Alien Worlds Fractal now for 6 weeks on Thursday at 1600 UTC. And I just wanted to give a quick update that we applied for a grant to Alien Worlds to see if they acknowledge that this governance system was beneficial to their ecosystem. And we just received notice that we received 100,000 trillium from Alien Worlds. So that's going to be going 100% to participants to our weekly meeting. So we're keeping track of our fractal and our governance on the Wax blockchain. And then maybe it's a question for another time. I don't have my head completely wrapped around it, and it might not be completely sorted out. But if we skip ahead and we see, the blockchain launched, and we've had these initial fractal groups. What do you see as as us coming into the blockchain? We're keeping our own consensus recording of our weekly meetings, but I have a good understanding of how the groups that belong to the Genesis Fractally work. But can you just maybe shed some light on how we would migrate, these other fractals into the blockchain when it's launched?
All right. Well, if it's on a EOS or Hive derivative, chances are we can migrate the keys associated with all the accounts, and you can have matching accounts for all the users on both chains. Have to deconflict account names if there's any account name conflicts, but it should be possible to bring everyone over and then do a snapshot. You can either do a snapshot and deploy your token over here, governed under our system, or that's probably going to be if you want to leverage all the tools we're creating, it's going to work well on our blockchain because it's not going to be necessarily easy to port. But then I would migrate any tokens over to, say, Wax or other chains if they support it using IBC. But that's down the line. But someone can always perform the role of a bridge, of bridging tokens or doing a snapshot of a token distribution and making that the initial token distribution of the fractal on our chain. And then we provide liquidity through all the tokens on our chain. So that would be the goal there. So I have been reaching out to some exchanges about getting listed and having liquidity as well. Can't say anything more than that, but that is there is some interest in providing that for the new chain as well. The main thing existing chains like EOS and Wax and BitShares and Hive have is they're already listed on exchanges. But I think we'll be in a place where we can provide bridges. But this is a multi-year project, so that's. I am curious how many people. Well, send your information to Matt. Matt will summarize how many people are in each fractal for us, and how much overlap there is. We can look at the size of the community. If that is interested in fractal governance broadly. Cool.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Can I may I have any questions about the liquidity that you plan on using? You mentioned exchanges. Do you plan any way using decentralized liquidity protocols?
Well, in the Fractally white paper, we talk about mutual respect, which would be providing liquidity between all the different fractal tokens on our chain and with inter-blockchain communication. That same type of mutual respect for other blockchains can be used to provide liquidity and to subsidize liquidity to other blockchains and other tokens, and potentially even to centralized exchanges to subsidize them listing us. So one of the benefits we have is we can reach consensus on whether or not we want to compensate an exchange for listing us, whereas that's more difficult to do for other chains without a foundation doing it. So there's lots of opportunity there, and I think there's I do support decentralized DeFi, decentralized exchanges being the primary way in which fractals operate. The centralized exchange infrastructure is obviously compromised.
I would like to discuss, based on my experience, so some of it maybe, but if you're interested, we can set up a time and maybe discuss this further, because I have some ideas based on my experience that you may be interested in. It's up to you, but I may be able to help out.
All right. Yeah, please, with respect to that, reach out to Gregory or Joshua, and fill them in on that, and we can distill that down. I kind of need to filter some things, or I'll just get overwhelmed. But yes, thank you. Jorge.
Yes, thank you. So I wanted to tell everybody that, as many of you guys know, I identified several weeks ago noise as an important parameter to model these systems. And studying complex systems, cells, for example, the way they overcome noise is through effective feedback mechanisms. And I wanted two things. First, I want you guys to know that I created a Pomelo grant in order to find ways to create feedback mechanisms for this kind of processes, this kind of decentralized governance processes. I just posted the link on the chat, and so please go there and show your love. And second, in order to do this, in order to find effective feedback mechanisms, I've been studying the Tesla Inc. protocol. One thing they do, I'm talking about the big, huge corporation. And one thing they do is they are very efficient at identifying where the bottleneck is. So it's easier for they, because, well, they are producing cars. So where is the bottleneck to produce the current car we are producing? That's easier. We don't have a product yet, and we don't have a mission yet, but still, if we could find a way to identify where our bottlenecks are, that'll make my job and much easier, and identifying how to feedback on our protocols. So that's another call to action, guys. If you can bring ideas on how to identify our biggest bottlenecks at any time on our processes.
Yeah, I'd say right now one of our biggest bottlenecks is getting the software developed. Once we open source it at the end of summer, that will allow more eyes to come in, and more people can start doing things in parallel, and hopefully unblock that. And more people can start saying, well, man, I really wish I had a tool to do this or whatnot. So whether it's things like creating bridges for exchanges, or new smart contracts for various things, and user interfaces for them. Recruiting developer talent is a bottleneck for every organization, even when they've got money. And it's really a challenge of how much time do you spend interviewing and training versus just getting stuff done with your existing team. Yeah, I know that was a big problem Block One faced, is the team spent half their time trying to interview and grow and train. And so you lost a lot of productivity that could have been making forward progress. So that's those are some of the bottlenecks that I can see as far as from a technological perspective. But I also think the lack of technological tools is bottlenecking onboarding. And it's creating burden on people like Joshua and Gregory to have to manually do this, and on the entire community, and verifying that, and then the outside world trusting. So there's all these bottlenecks that we can eliminate through automation, and tools to make it easier for people to get on board. But yes, I appreciate that that concept. Cruz.
Yes, we have a new database, we have a new billing system, and third problem that I think is important is interblockchain. So bringing other tokens to Fractally and bringing Fractal to other. Can you share anything, maybe ideas, thoughts, vision about that?
Oh, I've got something that is going to be incredibly powerful, if not slightly controversial, but I do not want to share it at this time, primarily in order to preserve a certain amount of competitive advantage for what we're trying to do, because I guess in theory, elements of this could be adopted by other chains slightly quicker than us if we shared the ideas too soon. That said, it should be possible to do inter-blockchain communication with all chains, including Bitcoin.
Great, thank you. Maybe stable coins, you can say anything about that. Are we planning to have any all them on?
It's a smart contract platform. Anyone can build and deploy apps. There's going to be a app reputation trust system. See, our superpower is this fractal governance. Our superpower is real people that are able to contribute and vote and not getting captured by whales. And if we leverage that superpower, we can be the most trusted blockchain. Trust being the thing that gives value and facilitates commerce and economic development. So it means we can do things no one else can do because they don't have trust, right? They're stuck in a world of trying to do things in a completely trustless, whatever that means, way, which it limits things to mathematical models of game theory, which I think are limited in scope. But because we have a small town-based governance of true consensus and actual accountability on chain, we can come to consensus on things that no other chain could come to consensus on. For example, an exchange gets hacked and all the funds get transferred somewhere. But we actually have the ability in a fair, honest, transparent way to make things right for that exchange and protect all of our users. Other chains, if they tried to do that, no one really trusts the process because it would involve certain insiders who were able to, coordinate with other exchanges and mining pool operators to facilitate a fork to get it done. And that's not seen as fair because most people are not insiders. With our governance process, there are no insiders versus outsiders. There's just show up, reach consensus, and people can trust that the process is fair and just and not arbitrary, right? So what happens on all the other chains is it appears arbitrary, and therefore doing anything arbitrary undermines trust, which means they're stuck with code is law. You got hacked, too bad, so sad. But we can't be arbitrary. We have to follow processes, and people have to have faith in those processes. And as long as the process is followed, then the outcome is justified. And the means justifies the ends. Is a big statement I make in my book. It has to justify the end. Whereas on these other blockchains, when they try to recover from hacks or anything that requires trust, it looks like the end justifies the means, right? They say, well, the end result is the exchange got their money back. It doesn't matter how we got there. I bribed these people. I did this. We made it happen. And then people are like, that's not fair. Who gets to decide that end is the just end? But we have a means that we say is justified, and everyone agrees that the means is justified, and therefore the end result, whether the exchange gets the money back or not, is justified, and it can be trusted. So our challenge in the broader community is to prove that as we operate, we can maintain integrity with the value systems, and in a way that people inside the community and outside the community can say that is a well-governed community that respects property, respects intention, and that I can trust is not going to screw me. That's what people want to know is, can I trust this group of people? And if the answer is yes, then that is the superpower. That allows us to do everything much more efficiently and do things that are impossible for other chains to do in a usable manner. Because there are IBC solutions out there between different chains, They tend to either be technologically complicated to operate, which impairs the user experience, or you end up having some middlemen that are self-appointed that facilitate it, and that seems centralized and unaccountable. So that's why I'm excited about the innovation that we can build on top of good governance, and why I think the Fractally chain that is its superpower, even more so than its technological capabilities.
So, so you do have an ace in your sleeves. So regarding the IBC, and we can.
Yes, I've got an idea. It's likely to be controversial among those who don't trust governance, but if you trust the governance process.
So it doesn't have to be trustless. Is that what you're saying? It doesn't have to be trustless, but you have to trust in the community and the tools we have. You can build IBC on top of that. Is that?
Yes, it's a combination of technological trust and governance. It's those two things brought together that facilitate it. Here's the biggest challenge with inter-blockchain communication. When another blockchain forks, every other chain that was relying on it needs a subjective means of knowing which fork to follow. And every chain out there is going to have some problem at some point. And if your chain is too rigid from an IBC perspective, you can't handle it. Basically, you have to fork the entire web of interconnected blockchains anytime any chain forks. All right. And that's the problem. And that's why inter-blockchain communication on a purely technical basis is fragile. Is because you lack a subjective means of determining what the other chain's state actually is without incorporating all that state into your chain. And that means you have to fork when they fork, and they have to fork when you fork. And that's the root challenge of inter-blockchain communication. And the other challenge with inter-blockchain communication is normally when you fork, you get two copies, right? Bitcoin Cash, Bitcoin, everyone gets a thing. But when IBC is involved, you can't create two copies of every other chain you're talking to, right? Only one of those two chains has legitimate title to the tokens held on the other chain. And how does the other chain know which one to follow? It's a real problem with inter-blockchain communication. In the unhappy case, and we know the unhappy case will happen eventually. And if you don't have a plan for it, what do you do? And so I think that's the major thing hindering inter-blockchain communication in the industry as a whole is dealing with those corner cases that no one wants to really think about.
Great. Thank you. Thank you.
All right. I'm going to take one more question if anyone has it. Otherwise, thank you all. And next week, show up early at 30 minutes before if you want to have these types of discussions, because we're going to have 2 rounds next week, which means we won't have a post question and answer. So show up 30 minutes early, and we'll have 45 minutes of pre-breakout room discussion, and then go into the breakout room. All right.
Yes, thank you. Regarding this example you gave of, for example, an exchange getting hacked and the community achieving consensus on restoring the tokens to the exchange, this week on the Eden Fractal, there was some concern about it, but because, for example, if the same case, but for some reason the community's mind was led to believe that it was correct to remove funds from some minority, it all becomes like mob rule. And the example the person gave in the Eden Fractal meeting was the vaccines. There was a lot of polarization last couple of years regarding the vaccines. And in Canada, for example, some non-vaxxers were trying to get ostracized. Well, they were almost ostracized by the government. So for example, what will happen if tomorrow the New York Times or CNN appeared and said that this member within this fractal community needs to be removed from all funds because whatever they say, how are you planning to protect those small minorities, those contrarians within this system?
Right. Wonderful question, and it's the root of my book. The root of my book is true democracy is only possible among independent parties, people who have the ability to say no, which means that you have options. So a community can cut you out, yes, because that's the community's right to say no to you, and you can leave the community. If you're codependent, which means you can't survive without the community, that's when that actually becomes threatening, because as a society, we become so codependent that if the banks cut you off and the government cuts you off and everything, how do you even buy food, right? And that's a very challenging thing. So that's why we have the fractal structure, which allows smaller groups to be independent, and then it's composed of democracies of democracies of democracies. That's why we have the 7,000 member limit, is so that no one group gets so big that the members become codependent and can't stand apart, and therefore they can't consent, and therefore it breaks down. Because the way that the minority controls the majority is that the majority is dependent. They can't say no. And so the minority gets there, they get in incumbent power, and they start doing stuff, and no one can resist, because if the first person who resists gets cut off, that's too high a price to pay. All right, so your relationship with any community that you're in has to be one of interdependence, not codependence, which means you're cooperating, you're adding value for mutual benefit, but you're not dependent on them and they're not dependent on you. And it's only from that place of independent people cooperating that you can have true democracy. Otherwise, it devolves into mob rule and majoritism. And so we have the fractal structure so that you can have 5 different fractals that can democratically come together, but any one fractal can secede because the people are organized locally, which is why the concept of local fractals, we need things to be locally so that we can do that. Because we need to protect the majority from the minority and the minority from the majority. And the only way to do that is through freedom of association, which if you prevent somebody from ostracizing someone, you're violating freedom of association. So you have to allow ostracization. But the same thing that allows ostracization is what allows secession, right? So the same countries say that we're going to tell you you're not allowed to be part of us, but we're also going to tell you you're not allowed to secede. That is the hypocrisy of corrupt governance. And that is the difference with what we're saying, is that the two go hand in hand. The right to secede and the right to ostracize are the same thing. Ostracizing is just everyone seceding from one person, and secession is one person seceding from everyone. And as a person, it's your personal responsibility to make sure you do not become codependent on any democratic institution you join. Because if you join it and then you lose your freedom, then you just signed up for slavery to the masses. And that is not what democracy is about. It's about mutual aid, not about, what is it, a suicide pact? So I hope that answers your question there, because that is the very root of my book.
So you're saying that if, for example, member A contributes tons of work that awards him tons of respect to a given community, and only that, and at some point that community decides to ostracize him, and he ends up with having nothing, that was his fault in the first place for becoming dependent on that community, on putting his eggs on only one basket, correct?
To a certain extent, yeah. So you should have a diversified portfolio, be a part of more than one community, potentially. or at the very least, right? You have all these virtual assets, which is just reputation, right? Everything we're doing here is just reputation. We're digitizing and making a little bit more objective reputation. Anyone can lose reputation with any community, and there's nothing you can really do about it. It's just human nature. You can't force people to respect you, right? You can't force people to hold you in high regard or to talk to you. Right? If they want to shun you walking down the street, they're going to shun you when you walk down the street, and that might cause your business to suffer and fail. Reputation, that's just the nature of reputation. But no one in the group is going to use violence to take any of your physical possessions away. So as long as things exist in the realm of information, of consensus, right, the consensus opinion of the group, that's always subject, because you don't own it. Everyone else owns their opinion of your balance, not you. So that's dangerous if you're dependent upon it, which is why you want to have many options. So if one community kicks you out, you can go find another community that will respect you. It means you do things to make sure that that's sort of like the problem right now. If you're a citizen of one country and that country turns against you, you're screwed, right? Having dual passports and things like that would be great. The problem is the country's all so big and you have to move away from family. You've got all these ties that kind of hold you to one place. But if countries were smaller and you only had to move 50 miles in order to get to another jurisdiction, then all of a sudden you've got far more options and far more freedom. And so the goal of fractal governance is to restructure things as local as possible so that it's not catastrophic if the government you happen to be under turns against you, which we can see happen. It happens against minorities all the time. And those minorities are not necessarily based on race. It could be ideological minorities, right? You've heard anti-vaccine, they turn against you. If you're, you have this whole pro-life, pro-choice debate, all this violence, they can turn against different subsets of the community. So this is, that's why I'm here. So, I think the biggest challenge in explaining this concept to people is that they project this system applied to society at large and say that would be horrible. And I agree, it would be horrible if we had one fractal for the entire country. That would be a disaster because it would not have maintained the property of a fractal. And if everyone was part of one thing, right? Bitcoin maximalism, everyone uses Bitcoin. That's a disaster because Bitcoin is more centralized than the Federal Reserve if you look at the number of key players. What is good is having 1,000 different cryptocurrencies flourishing. And so if something happens to Bitcoin, no big deal. Go to Litecoin, go to Ethereum, go to EOS. Those are the options. And just like you don't want to become dependent on one source of food, you don't want to become dependent on one source of respect. So that's logical fallacy of applying something that's meant to be small to something really, really big, or projecting yourselves to becoming dependent upon instead of maintaining your independence is where people go astray. I think that's going to be one of the biggest challenges to both keep our sights on as we're growing and to educate new members on, because they will rightly be afraid that this could be a social credit score like China. You cross the community and all of a sudden you're cut off from all public services, and that would be a disaster. And that's what I'm trying to prevent by keeping things modular and independent. Like in my book, I have counties. You pay all your taxes to your local county, and your local county pays it to the state, and the state pays it to the country, and the country participates in UN or something like that. You do that so that if one county is abusing you for tax purposes, you move to another county that's not. And it's not all, your entire county can secede if the higher levels are causing problems. That protects you as the individual if your county can secede. But if you need to organize 30 million people in order to affect a secession becomes almost impossible because you have to reach consensus at such a broad scale. And then it's like the UK leaving the European Union. There's so many economic ties and other things that it makes it really complicated because they become codependent instead of maintaining independence. So those are, once again, the root of my book. Thank you for allowing me to expand on that for 10 minutes.
Epic sound bites today. I'm going to take some of these out as independent clips. Really, really awesome. Thank you guys for being here and extracting all the wisdom out into the open, and really kind of reminding us, kind of getting back to the heart of the matter of why we're really all here. We don't necessarily hit some of these topics in some of the previous meetings enough. So pretty cool. Anything you want to say in closing, Dan, before we roll the
place to leave.
Say that again.
Good place to end it. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to cue the outro. So I put a link to the Discord if you guys want to, if anyone wants to hop over there. I'll be there for a moment. I don't know how long, but there's a little hangout channel there. That's where we'll do the after party stuff from now on, just so that we can end the meeting. And also just a reminder, next week is when we're going to be implementing the new changes. So if you're intend to move on to a second round, just make sure you've allocated the time like you have to be here to this point, because this is about how long it might take. So also, it's going to be our first time next week. So just be patient with the process, be ready to share any feedback, and let's get ready to basically see the next era of the Genesis Fractal. And thanks everyone for being here, part of the ride. None of this is possible without you. And shout out to the Fractally team every week, bringing us closer to the vision and the intention of what's in the white paper. Until next time.
Let's go.